Welcome, my friend. Before we begin this journey, I want you to take a moment. Find a place where you can sit comfortably, or even better, lie down. Rest your hands by your side. Take in a deep breath and let it go slowly. This isn't a lecture. It isn't a rushed video that you need to catch up with. This is a story, a long one, a journey into the past. For the next hour, you don't need to do anything. No phone, no distractions, no responsibilities. Just listen. Let the words paint the picture. Let your mind wander freely, as if you are walking down ancient streets, hearing distant voices, and feeling the morning air of civilizations long gone. The world we are about to enter is not easy. It's harsh, cruel, and heavy with suffering. But don't worry. I'll guide you gently, step by step, through it. Think of this as looking through a window at history, watching, observing, imagining, but always safe in the knowledge that it is the past. So, let yourself relax. Close your eyes if you wish. With each breath, allow the noise of the present world to fade. Because now, we are traveling back, thousands of years into the age of empires and slavery. The hook. Imagine waking up, not in your own bed, not even in a room that belongs to you, but on the cold floor of a mud brick hut or the damp corner of a master's household. The first rays of the sun are not yours to enjoy. They are the alarm clock summoning you to labor you never chose. You are property. You can be bought, sold, punished, or killed without consequence. In the grand cities of Egypt, Rome, Greece, or Mesopotamia, magnificent monuments and luxurious lives are built upon your broken back. This is slavery in the ancient world, and you wouldn't survive a single day. Introduction: the hidden backbone of civilization. Slavery is not a side story in history. It is the foundation. When we admire the towering pyramids of Egypt, the grand temples of Greece, or the endless roads of Rome, we are looking at the silent work of countless slaves. These people are rarely mentioned by name. They are not remembered as individuals. Yet, without their blood, sweat, and tears, much of what we call civilization would not exist. But what exactly was slavery? In the ancient world, it was not only common, it was accepted as natural. To own another human being was seen as a sign of wealth, power, and prestige. Kings, nobles, priests, and merchants all relied on slaves to build, farm, cook, clean, and even fight their wars. Slaves came from many sources. Some were prisoners of war, captured when armies clashed. Others were born into slavery, inheriting the fate of their parents. Many fell into debt, unable to pay back what they owed, and sold themselves, or were sold by their families, into bondage. Once enslaved, escape was nearly impossible. Unlike free workers, a slave had no choice, no bargaining power, no hope of a better contract. They were property. Their lives were tools in someone else's hands. Now, let us step into that world. Let us walk in the sandals of a slave in ancient times. From the moment the sun rises to the final moments before sleep, we will see what one day of survival meant. Morning. The harsh awakening. The first sound you hear is not a gentle call. It's a whip crack, a harsh shout, or the shuffle of others rising quickly so they are not beaten for laziness. You wake up on the hard ground, with little more than a thin blanket, if you're lucky. The air is cold, and your body aches, not just from yesterday's labor, but from years of endless toil. Hunger gnaws at you, for food is scarce, and the masters never waste their riches on their slaves. In Egypt, you might be marched to the fields to water crops under the blazing sun, or to carry heavy stones for construction. In Rome, you could be sent to clean, cook, or labor in a mine. In Greece, you might be ordered to grind grain from dawn until dusk. In Mesopotamia, you might begin the day in a temple storehouse, carrying loads of grain or clay tablets. The details differ, but the rhythm is the same. From the first light of morning, you belong to someone else. Daily existence, body and soul. Broken slaves worked long hours, often from sunrise to sunset, and sometimes beyond. There was no dignity in the tasks, only necessity. If something had to be done, whether dangerous, dirty, or exhausting, the slave would be the one to do it. In Rome, slaves rowed warships, their hands chained to the oars. If they collapsed, they were whipped until they stood again, or tossed overboard if they couldn't. In Greece, slaves mined silver deep underground, breathing dust until their lungs failed. In Egypt, slaves pulled massive stones with ropes, straining under weights no human should carry. Food was meager, often just bread, porridge, or thin soup. Clothing was simple rags, sometimes not enough to protect from cold or heat. Punishments were brutal: whippings, brandings, or worse. A slave was not considered fully human, but an object that could be corrected, broken, or discarded. And yet, amid this suffering, life went on. Slaves talked quietly among themselves. They shared stories of home, whispered prayers, or clung to memories of freedom. These small moments of humanity were their rebellion, the only way to survive the endless days. The emotional weight. But the hardest part was not the labor. It was the knowledge that tomorrow would be the same, and the next day, and the next. There was no escape from this cycle. Dreams of freedom were crushed by the reality that even if you escaped, you had nowhere to go, no money, no status, and a high chance of being caught and punished severely. To live as a slave was to carry a weight heavier than chains, the weight of hopelessness. Closing the first day, transition to next parts. As the sun sets, the body collapses in exhaustion. You eat whatever scraps are given. You may be forced to share a space with dozens of others, crammed into huts or corners of a house. Sleep is not peaceful. It is survival, a chance to regain just enough strength to endure another day. And so the cycle continues, day after day, week after week, year after year. This was the life of a slave in the ancient world, and even one single day of it would break you. The ancient world awakens. The Nile River glimmers under the rising sun. Its slow, endless waters stretch across the desert, feeding the land, giving life to the kingdom of Egypt. Birds call above the reeds, fishermen cast their nets, and priests in white linen robes prepare morning rituals to honor the gods. But for you, a slave in this grand civilization, the sunrise is not a moment of beauty. It is the beginning of another long, merciless day. The masters rise with comfort. You rise with fear. Morning, the call to labor. Your body is stirred awake not by a gentle hand, but by a command. Overseers shout, sticks in hand, making sure no one dares to linger. You grab what little cloth covers you, a ragged piece of linen, and step barefoot onto the cool, dusty earth. Breakfast, if it exists, is no more than a handful of barley bread or thin beer. It is not meant to fill you, only to keep you alive for work. Soon you are marched to your task. Perhaps you are among those chosen to labor in the royal fields, where endless rows of wheat and barley await. The sun has only just risen, but already its warmth settles heavily on your skin. The Nile may bless the land, But the blessing is not yours. It belongs to the masters, the nobles, the priests, the pharaoh himself. You are merely the hands that make their blessing grow. Labor in the fields. You step into the fertile mud left behind by the river's flood. Your task may be to dig, to plant, to cut reeds, or to carry baskets heavy with crops. Bent backs, sweating faces, the sound of tools striking soil. It is a rhythm that never ends. The overseer watches closely. If you slow, the stick cracks across your shoulders. If you stumble, the whip bites into your skin. And yet you keep moving, because to stop is worse than the pain of exhaustion. The fields stretch for miles. The pharaoh's granaries must always be full. And every grain you touch, every stalk you cut, is claimed by another's hand. The builders of eternity. But not all slaves work in the fields. Some are dragged to construction sites where Egypt's eternal monuments rise from the desert. The pyramids, the temples, the colossal statues, these wonders of the world do not build themselves. Behind their perfection is the suffering of thousands. You may be among those pulling ropes tied to massive stones. The weight is beyond reason, and yet dozens of men strain together to drag each block up ramps of sand and mud brick. Overseers shout, whips crack, sweat pours. If one man falls, another is forced to take his place. The sun climbs higher, blazing overhead. Its light reflects off the pale limestone, burning your eyes. Dust chokes your throat. Your hands bleed from rough ropes. The monuments are meant to last for eternity. But for you, there is only the present, the next breath, the next command, the next lash. The midday strain. By midday, the heat is unbearable. The desert shows no mercy. Sweat soaks the linen cloth around your waist, and your mouth dries until even swallowing hurts. Food may be given. Another piece of bread, perhaps onions, beans, or dates, if fortune smiles. It is not kindness, it is necessity. You must be kept alive just long enough to keep working. After a short rest, labor resumes. There is no choice, no voice to protest. The masters eat well, shaded in cool halls. You return to the dust and the stone. Afternoon, endless toil. The hours blur together. In the fields, you swing sickles until your arms burn. In construction, you push, lift, and drag until your back feels as though it will split. In the homes of the rich, you scrub floors, grind grain, or carry water until your body aches. Slavery in Egypt is not one thing, it is many. Some are farmhands, some are builders, some are servants, some are even trained as scribes, cooks, or soldiers. But all are bound by the same truth. Their lives are not their own. The sun slowly begins to fall, but there is no relief. Work continues until the overseer allows otherwise. The whip and the fear punishment is always near. A dropped basket, a broken tool, a moment of hesitation, all can invite the overseer's anger. The whip is not just a weapon, it is a constant presence. You hear it snap across someone's back and flinch, even if it is not yours. You see the welts, the blood, the tears of those around you, and you know, tomorrow it could be you. Fear is the invisible chain, binding every slave. Evening. The long walk back. At last, as the sun lowers and the air cools, the overseer signals the day's end. Muscles trembling, feet raw from the sand and stone, you return to the quarters assigned to you. They are not homes, only shelters. Mud brick huts, crowded, airless, filled with the smell of sweat and exhaustion. Men and women collapse wherever they can find space. Some whisper prayers to the gods, asking for mercy. Others say nothing at all, too drained to form words. Dinner is little different from breakfast. A piece of bread, perhaps a little beer brewed from barley. You eat quickly because hunger allows no patience. The silent night falls over Egypt. The stars emerge above the desert, vast and endless. The pharaoh sleeps in his palace, priests chant in the temples, and nobles feast in their halls. You, a slave, lie on the hard ground, staring at the ceiling of your hut. Or if you're too tired, you don't even notice. Tomorrow will come, and it will be the same. The same hunger, the same pain, the same fear. Slavery is not a single event. It is a cycle, a chain of days that never breaks. The hidden humanity. And yet, even in this suffering, small sparks of life remain. A slave may whisper a story from childhood. A mother may sing softly to her child, even in chains. Friends may share laughter quietly in the dark, finding a moment of warmth in a cold world. It is these fragile sparks of humanity that survive, even when everything else is taken away. The paradox of freedom. When people think of ancient Greece, they often imagine marble temples gleaming in the sun, wise philosophers debating in the agora, and heroic warriors sailing across the seas. Greece is remembered as the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, theatre, and reason. But beneath this shining image lies a shadow. For every man who stood proudly in the assembly, casting his vote, there were many more who had no voice, no choice, no freedom. Democracy was built on the backs of those who would never experience it. Slavery was not an exception in Greece. It was the foundation. And to understand what it meant to be a slave in this world, you must step into their sandals for a single day. Morning. The awakening in the master's house. You awaken not to the sound of birds or the soft glow of dawn, but to the harsh reality of duty. The house you live in is not yours. It is the oikos, the household of your master. Perhaps you are a domestic slave, one of those assigned to serve directly within the home. For you, morning begins with cleaning. You sweep the floors, grind grain at the heavy stone mill, and carry water from the well in heavy jars balanced against your aching shoulders. Your master's family may still be asleep, resting on soft couches, but you and the other slaves are already working, ensuring that when they rise, the home is orderly, the meals are prepared, and their day begins without inconvenience. The Greek home is modest compared to the palaces of Egypt, but for a slave, its walls feel like a prison all the same. The market and the streets. Some slaves are not kept indoors. They are sent out into the streets of Athens, Corinth, or Sparta, carrying goods, fetching supplies, or even working as attendants for their masters in the bustling agora, the heart of Greek public life. The market is alive with voices. Merchants shout prices, citizens argue over politics, philosophers gather students around them to speak of justice, virtue, and freedom. You listen, but the words sting. They are not meant for you. Freedom, justice, equality, these are fine ideas, but they end at your chained ankles. No philosopher argues for your vote. No citizen defends your right to speak. You are present, but invisible. Public health, Rome's double-edged sword. Ironically, Rome had some of the world's earliest public health systems. They built aqueducts, sewers, cloaca maxima, and bathhouses. These helped, but they also created new problems. Bathhouses, for example, were centers of disease spread. Imagine hundreds of people sharing the same warm pools, coughing, sneezing, and leaving filth behind. Instead of cleansing you, A dip might give you your next infection. The sewers kept streets cleaner, but many poorer neighborhoods lacked access. Waste was still dumped in alleys and courtyards, breeding bacteria. And aqueducts? Impressive, yes, but they often fed water through lead pipes. Generations of Romans slowly poisoned themselves without realizing it. Mental health, no escape. Physical illness wasn't the only danger. Life in Rome was stressful, brutal, and violent. Today we talk about anxiety, depression, and trauma. But in Rome, such struggles had no name. If you showed signs of mental illness, people might say you were cursed by the gods or possessed by spirits. Treatments involved prayers, sacrifices, or exile. No compassion, no therapy. The grim reality. So let's put this into perspective. You, a modern person, fall ill in ancient Rome. Maybe you catch dysentery from water. Maybe you cut your hand at the market. Maybe you just eat spoiled bread. Your options are grim. Do nothing and hope your body fights it off. Visit a doctor who drains your blood, leaving you weaker. Use a charm or ritual that offers no real help. Without modern medicine, even the healthiest person today would be unlikely to last more than a few weeks before succumbing to infection, malnutrition, or disease. Why you wouldn't survive medicine is supposed to heal. In Rome, it often killed. Survival wasn't about treatment. It was about luck. If your body could endure hunger, parasites, and injury, you lived. If not, you died. There were no second chances, no antibiotics, no hospitals, no safety net. Just a brutal truth. Ancient Rome was one of the worst places in history to get sick. And if you think that's terrifying, wait until you see how Rome treated criminals, rebels, and the unlucky souls who faced the full force of Roman law and order. Night, a moment of rest. When the sun finally sets, slaves return to their quarters. Exhausted, battered, sometimes bleeding, they collapse on mats. For a brief moment, silence fills the air. Some whisper prayers to foreign gods. Some think of families torn away. Some dream of escape. Rebellion was always in the air. Stories of Spartacus, the gladiator who led a massive slave revolt, circulated in hushed voices. But revolt was dangerous, punished with crucifixion. Along Roman roads, crosses lined the way, each bearing a slave's body as a warning. So most endured day after day, until their strength gave out. Closing reflection. This was Rome, an empire of emperors, legions, and triumphs, but also an empire built on broken backs. The roads you walk, the aqueducts that carried water, the villas that still stand, all of them exist because millions of slaves lived and died in silence. And you, if you were one of them, would not survive long. The work would break you, the punishments would crush you, and the hope of freedom would slowly fade into despair. Rome was glorious for its citizens, but for its slaves, it was a day that never ended. The whip and the chain, instruments of fear. If you lived as a slave in Rome or anywhere in the ancient world, you carried fear like a shadow. The whip was always near, coiled on a hook, ready to cut your skin open if you slowed your work. Chains clinked not only in the mines, but also in households. Some slaves slept with shackles on their ankles, a constant reminder that they were property. Runaway attempts were common, but failure meant torture. A fugitive might be branded with the letter F for fugitivus, forever marked as a runaway. Imagine the sting of iron searing your skin, and then the realization that freedom was lost forever. Punishments that broke the soul. Slaves were punished in ways designed to terrify others. Flogging was routine. Cutting rations was routine. But worse punishments included being sold to harsher masters or sent to quarries and mines, where death was certain. The Romans were especially cruel in their warnings. If a slave killed his master, even in defense, law demanded the execution of the entire household of slaves. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, could be crucified for the act of one. Imagine standing among your companions, tied to posts along the Appian Way, while Roman citizens walked by, pointing and mocking. The sun scorched your skin by day. The cold gnawed your bones by night. Death was slow, and Rome wanted you to be seen, the spirit of resistance. Yet even under such cruelty, resistance smoldered. Slaves sabotaged tools, worked slowly, broke amphorae accidentally. Some stole food, others whispered forbidden songs of home. In villages, runaway slaves sometimes gathered in forests or mountains, forming bandit groups. They raided villas, stole from merchants, and lived in defiance of Rome. These were dangerous lives, constantly hunted, never secure, but they proved one thing: the enslaved spirit could not be crushed entirely. The Great Revolt of Spartacus. The greatest resistance came in 73 BCE, when Spartacus, a gladiator from Thrace, escaped from a gladiator school with around 70 others. Armed with kitchen knives and stolen weapons, they fled to the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. From there, thousands joined him, slaves from fields, households, and mines. The rebellion swelled to nearly 70,000 fighters. For 2 years, they defeated Roman armies, sending shockwaves through the empire. But Rome's fury was relentless. Eventually, Spartacus and his army were crushed. 6,000 survivors were crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies stretching for miles, a living wall of agony meant to warn every slave. Still, the story of Spartacus lived on. It whispered hope that even the most powerless could rise against the greatest empire. Nighttime dreams of freedom. Even in times without open revolt, slaves dreamed. Lying on straw mats, their backs scarred and hands blistered, they imagined freedom. Some dreamed of escape by sea, others of blending into the city crowds. Some prayed to gods, Roman, Greek, African, Eastern, asking for deliverance. And some found small freedoms in love, a stolen glance, a whispered promise in the dark, a hand reaching for yours after a day of suffering. These moments of humanity could not be whipped out of existence. Closing reflection. Brutality was Rome's language of control. Chains, whips, crucifixions. They ensured obedience through fear. And yet resistance always flickered, sometimes as small acts, sometimes as flames that shook the empire.